Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Hope you are doing well. Oh, let's get the microphone in the right spot. Holy cow, Ray doesn't even know what he's doing here. I was going to say it's a Monday. It's a Tuesday, and I'm still a disaster. Here we go. There we go. Is that a little bit better? You can hear me now. Let's try that again. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Thanks for joining me here today on Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday, powered by FantasyGuru.com, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. We do this show, and hopefully you enjoy it. Tell a friend, pass the word, free show. I'm here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Justin Fensterman is here on Wednesdays. A different schedule on SiriusXM this week. Jeff Mann's show is 3 to 6 Eastern, Monday through Friday. I'm usually on with Jeff Wednesdays. I've got a medical appointment I got to take care of tomorrow, so I'm not going to be on the show tomorrow. I'm going to be on the show today. So I'm doing double duty today, doing this show from 12 to 1 Eastern here, Fantasy Sports Day for free. And then over on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, I'll be with Jeff Mann today, Tuesday, for 3 hours. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, at The Ray Flowers. You can send me questions, comments, all that in the chat room over at FantasyGuru.com, as you see on the screen. $99 the rest of the way gets you access to all of our football coverage, all of it. Okay, DFS, seasonal, wagering, boom, one package, all done. Wondering what the hullabaloo's about over at FantasyGuru.com? Wondering if you should take the dip in the full season product in 2025? Sign up right now. Subscribe tab, top right corner. $99 gets you every article, every Discord room, every live stream, everything, every ranking set, everything we do at FantasyGuru.com through the playoffs, except for the Super Bowl betting guide, which is separate. Everything else from now through the playoffs, $99 at FantasyGuru.com. Click the subscribe link on the top right corner of the page. What are we talking about today? We're doing a little different. Shoot. That's supposed to look blue. I did a little, I put so every day for those people that don't know, you can watch the show live on Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ and ask questions. You can watch the show live on YouTube at YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork and ask questions, leave comments. We address throughout the show. I always throw up a little PDF on the screen. That's supposed to look blue. It kind of looks gray. Is that gray? It's blue. It is blue. It kind of looks gray now that I'm looking at it here. I tried a watermark in the back. The watermark was so pronounced. It was too much. I got kind of tired of just throwing up a white page and thought, let's make this a little bit fancier. So maybe I'll tweak that blue a little bit. But anyway, it's a little bit different. We got a border now. We're looking a little fancier. What are we talking about today? We'll review Monday Night Football between the Chargers and the Ravens. The Ravens defeated the Chargers 30-23. Ravens moved to 8-4. Chargers fall to 7-4. We'll talk about storylines across the league. We've got quarterback situations with Daniel Jones and Aidan O'Connell and Brock Purdy. Talk about some injured guys heading into a short week for some of these teams playing on Thanksgiving Day. Dobbs, Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Jake Ferguson, and then Demarcus Robinson and Jameson Williams. Ooh, we'll talk a little bit about that. Sean says it looks blue grayish. Yeah, it is. It's definitely blue. It's because it's on the blue scale. It's blue, but it does look kind of blue grayish. I'll tweak it for tomorrow or Thursday. Excuse me. I'll make a note of that right now. A little bit off. Not quite what I was going for. But anyway, then we'll talk in about 25 or 30 minutes with Armando and Marsal. We'll talk the waiver wire, a potentially big injury in the game last night with the Chargers in their backfield. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk to Armando about the situation with the Commanders. Their backfield's in disarray right now. What's going on with the Giants? 2 fumbles in 2 games for Tyrone Tracy. Do we have concerns there? Guys like Roschon Johnson, David Moore, Devaughn Vele, Nick Westbrook-Akine keeps scoring touchdowns. Not doing anything but scoring touchdowns. Who's the wide receiver to own with the Panthers? Is Noah Brown worth an addition? Theo Johnson, Noah Gray, 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks. We'll talk about that with Armando Marsal here in a few minutes, about 25 minutes. All right, let's talk about the game last night, 30-23 again. Excuse me, the Ravens defeated the Chargers. Started on the Ravens side of things. This Lamar Jackson's pretty good, folks. And it's really funny to me. Lamar Jackson won an MVP award last year that he didn't deserve. Should have been Josh Allen. It's going to be hard to keep the award away from him this year. I know a lot of people are starting to start the Saquon Barkley thing and all that, but Lamar Jackson is really playing good football right now. And I think the biggest thing is he's got 17 touchdown passes and 1 pick here of late. And I think it's his last 10 games, I think it's 25 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. Just stellar work. He's not turning the ball over. He's producing touchdowns. He had 2 more last night. Only threw the ball 22 times, and that's been something the Ravens have done from time to time based upon the matchup, throwing the ball a lot or throwing the ball a little. Last night we were expecting, big point total. We got the 53, the 53 points, so we got that. But the game didn't really go as expected. The Chargers did not have the success through the air. We'll talk about it in a second. Maybe that's a little surprising. Roschon Smith was out of action for the Ravens, but the Ravens were, put up 30 points, but a lot of this was Derrick Henry. So Lamar Jackson looked good last night. He had 2 passing scores. He had a rushing touchdown, had a huge fantasy game, and he continues his march toward the MVP award. He's been fantastic. Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, if I'm not mistaken, last night was the first game that Derrick Henry did not get into the end zone. You can't feel too bad about 24 carries for 140 yards. But he didn't catch a pass. He never catches passes. Sometimes he catches one. He's not a pass catcher. We all know that. He had a big game last night. Kind of took the game over in the second half. 24 for 140 again. That's 5.8 yards a carry. Just another dominant effort. And you see him, he's straight arming guys. He's running guys over. It just goes to show you how important coaching in the scheme is for a player. Because Henry with the Titans, last year, it's like, well, he's still effective, but he's kind of lost a step. Doesn't look like he's lost a step at all here at the Ravens. Father Time is undefeated. He's done a great job thus far, has Derrick Henry, in holding off Father Time. It's coming at some point. Does not look like it's happening, obviously, in 2024, though. So Derrick Henry continues to push toward being the number 2 running back in all of fantasy behind Saquon Barkley. Maybe he's the number 1 running, depends on your scoring system, all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is Henry was a phenomenal value because obviously Barkley went a couple of rounds ahead of Henry in a lot of drafts. Fact is that Derrick Henry has been terrific this season, and he had another strong effort last night, though he didn't get in the end zone. Now, for all of you, and I talked about this, all of you that went with Justice Hill, you got to win. And, we had Justice Hill ranked like 45 this week. As I talked about, I think it was here on the show. I know I talked about it in various outlets. I guess everyone was just so desperate that they thought this was going to be a 38-31 game and that the Ravens were going to throw the ball 38 times. It's rather remarkable that Hill paid off the way he did, considering they only threw the ball 22 times and he only had 4 carries. Do I think Hill was a good play this week? I still don't think Hill was a good play this week. And we talked about this a lot on the show yesterday. If you miss any of the shows, you can find them on demand on youtube.com/AtElitePlusNetwork, at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. You can always find them on Twitter X at Fantasy Guru site. A little hard, you have to scroll through, but they're on there. You can go to fantasyguru.com and just click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can always find the shows there. And of course, you can type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network and find the show that way. Take it with you on the go, all that good stuff. But you played Hill, and I said all along I didn't think it was a good play. He had 6 touches last night. Whoopie-doo. He had a 51-yard touchdown carry. So you got really lucky if you played Justice Hill. It worked out, but as I was saying, as we discussed yesterday on the show, make sure that you understand that you can make a bad decision and it can work. And you can make a good decision and it can't work. Let's make the right decision more often than not. Throwing Hill out there was a complete random, let's throw a dart if there's ever been one of those. Because again, 6 touches last night. And the game did not go as the people that were going to him anticipated. But that one play where he really wasn't touched, I guess he got touched a little bit near the line of scrimmage, but that one play, a 51-yard touchdown, made the night for him, and it worked out for anyone that played him. But again, don't do that again. Okay, next up is Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers had a nice night, 5 catches for 62 yards. Zay Flowers is the number 1 receiver for this team. We know that. We've known that. It's continued to be the case. The issue is last night, they threw the ball 22 times, and you say to yourself, well, 5 for 62 is pretty good for Flowers, and it is, given that context. But he had 8 of the 22 passes. Like, he still had a huge target share. That's over a third. Like, that's a light effort, given that. He had 2 plays. I think one was 22 and one was 25 yards, right? So he had 2 plays that were everything. The other 3 catches didn't do anything. But this is a continuation of, what we have seen with the Ravens this year, the up and down nature of the passing attack. Flowers continues to be the guy. There is no disputing that. So don't mistake anything I'm saying here as downing Zay Flowers, because it's not. He is the guy with the team. But you look at his production, since week 7, these are PPR points. 4, 19, 30, 7, 12, 11. It's fine. And in the end, because he's had these big blowout games, he's had games of 22, 22, 30, 19. He's in the wide receiver one talk for the total points this season because, as we discussed yesterday as well, so many of these wide receivers have gotten hurt. But there's been a lot of uneven play here. That's 3 straight games for Flowers where he's failed to reach 65 yards. That's 4 of 6 games where he's failed to reach 65 yards. He's only, he scored 3 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks, but he only has 3 touchdowns the last 10 games. So it's really sporadic with Tyler Flowers. The bottom line with Tyler Flowers is if you've got him, Tyler Flowers, sorry, wrong sport. Zay Flowers. The bottom line, if you have Zay Flowers, is you just got to play him. You don't worry about the matchups. If he scores 7 points, you play him the next week. It doesn't matter. In the end, the points will be there. It's just going to be an uneven road for him on a weekly basis. Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews scored. He had a rush for a first down, by the way, which was kind of strange. But anyway, 5 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown. Remember when Isiah Likely, according to a lot of people, was not only the better tight end between these two guys, but Isiah Likely was going to be a star this season? We'll talk about Isiah Likely in a second. But Mark Andrews scored a touchdown last night. That's 6 touchdowns in 7 games for Mark Andrews. Now, he is not lighting the world on fire. He's averaging 4 catches for 43 yards in that period of time, those 7 games, excuse me. So very moderate. 4 for 43. That's like every other tight end in football, right? The difference is the 6 scores in the 7 games. As a result, he is averaging the last 7 games 13.4 PPR points, which is not elite for a tight end, but it's a B+, A- level of scoring, right? For those people that remember grade. Do they get grades in school anymore? They give point numbers, all this kind of weird stuff. I think most of you probably remember what I'm talking about. It's a really good number for a tight end, 13.4 PPR points a game. And if you look at his production, there have been 2 games under 5 points in that stretch. Every other game is over 14. So he's had 2 kind of down efforts. Why? Because those are the 2 games he didn't score. And all the other ones there. Mark Andrews, as we have said now for 2 months. Well, actually, we've said it since the start. I've said all along that Mark Andrews was the guy I prefer. I anticipated Isiah likely being involved in having a role. I was nowhere near, as we've discussed, the fervor and the craziness. Because, again, a lot of people in the fantasy space, and I mean most of the people in the fantasy space, said Isiah Likely was the tight end after that first week, was the tight end to own. Mark Andrews was going to be a nobody. Maybe they could both be tight end, ones this year, but Isiah Likely with the bullet was the guy to have. Nah, brah. It's not been the way it went. So let's talk about Isiah Likely, who, again, 0 catches last night, 0 targets last night. That's the second time in 3 games he has not caught a pass. Okay? He has 1 game of 50 yards since week 1. Here are his point totals since week 1. Well, actually, let's just do it this way. He scored 26 points in week 1 to get everyone excited. Since then, in 10 games, he's averaging 5.5. The weird thing is that, again, this is the second time in 3 games where Isiah Likely hasn't had a target or hasn't had a catch. He's had 1 target. He had 1 target a couple games ago. 1 target in 2 games? Caught 4 balls for 75 yards in between in that game against the Steelers. But 2 games with 1 target. He ain't part of the offense right now, which is really weird. And it's really weird when you talk about this next player, Diontae Johnson. Why did the Ravens trade for Diontae Johnson? Is it merely to have a backup in case Zay Flowers gets hurt? This is bizarre. They made a trade to add Diontae Johnson. And Diontae Johnson has played 4 games for this team and caught 1 pass. He's played 36 snaps in 4 games. Like, he's barely on the field more than Tylan Wallace. Like, this is befuddling to me. Why on earth did they make the move to add Diontae Johnson if they had no intention of even putting him on the football field? It's just bizarre town. So for those of you that have been holding on, I mean, I said a couple of weeks ago, move on. If you're still holding Diontae Johnson, the only reason you're holding Diontae Johnson is because he's a handcuff in case Zay Flowers gets hurt. Because this is disastrous. Straight up, this is disastrous. He went from, the Panthers, he averaged with the Panthers 12 points a game in the PPR setup. He's gone from that to scoring 1.6 points in 4 games for the Ravens. Disastrous. On the other side of things, let's talk about Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was fine last night, not because of his passing. He did not have a good game passing. Now, he made some good passes that weren't caught. He threw some good balls where his guys let him down. Dobbins had a ball hit him in the hands he didn't pull in. Quientin Johnston had a couple balls hit him in the hands he didn't pull in. Okay. But he still scored decently because he ran 4 times for 29 yards and a touchdown. He has, in 3 consecutive games, either had a rushing touchdown or run for 65 yards. And we talk about this all the time, including yesterday. Quarterbacks that can run for 30 yards a week, it's huge. It's huge. He had the rushing touchdown yesterday to save him and, again, give him a decent effort. But the 30 rushing yards takes his 218 passing yards to like 290. Gives him a really good game as an air, through the air if you look at it that way. His athleticism is on full display. And they didn't win the game last night, and he didn't put those huge numbers up against a beatable Ravens defense. But he still got in the end zone with his wheels. And he's continuing to produce really solid numbers for a guy we were worried about at the start of the season. Now let's talk about the big situation. We'll talk a little bit more with Armando Marsal about the backfield with the Chargers. J.K. Dobbins hurt his knee last night, left the game, didn't play in the second half. And, I'm looking at it right now. I've been looking all morning. If one of you have seen an actual report, leave a comment here in the chat room. I've not seen an official report as to what's going on. So as of right now, I don't know if Dobbins is torched. I don't know if he'll be playing in the next game. I don't know what's going on. So we need a lot more information here to make a declarative statement on what to do. But Dobbins is somebody that I've expressed repeatedly on this show and Discord that I have concerns with staying healthy all season long. I've said it over and over again. I don't like being right when it comes to health of a player, right? But this might be the situation that we're dealing with the Chargers. So we need information there with Dobbins to know for sure. We saw Gus Edwards get in the end zone late in the game. It didn't matter. Gus Edwards averaging like 2.5 yards, 3.3 yards a carry. Is that it? He's got 2 games this year where he's run for 30 yards. He can't play third downs. He can go 11.55, just like he did with the Ravens forever, right? He can do that. And not surprisingly, he got the touchdown in the revenge game. But he's not a 3-down back. He'll never play third downs. He'll be the first and second down back, I think. Now, Haskins was active last night, and Vidal wasn't. So Haskins saw the field a ton when Dobbins went down. He only touched it once. My expectation is, and I've said this right all along, is if Dobbins is out, Vidal and Edwards are the running backs. Haskins will still be the third running back. Vidal is the only back that they have if Dobbins is down. Vidal is the only back that the Chargers have that can play 3 downs. Edwards can't. Haskins can't. So Vidal's the youngest and I think the most explosive and spry. So he's the most dynamic of those 3 guys. We will see as this week develops. For those of you that were holding Vidal, it might pay off. Might still not be anything. You might have held Vidal and dropped him recently. Okay. But Vidal is a pickup that we need to be paying attention to. We'll talk more about the situation with Armando Marsal here in a few minutes. Continuing on the review of last night's game, Quientin Johnston, 5 targets, no catches. I mean, he's really a touchdown or bust guy. And we can all get excited about the improvements he's made. And he's made improvements, which I will give him. But he still can't make the tough catch. There's no chance he's making a tough catch. It just doesn't happen. And if you look at his production this year, he's got 2 games of 50 yards and 1 of 55 yards all season long. In 4 of his 9 games, he hasn't hit 25 yards. I think a lot of people got really carried away with the improvement from last year in the touchdown production, which has been there. But last night on national TV, just a goose egg, and wasn't a very impressive effort in a goose egg effort, if that's even possible. It was an unimpressive effort. You get the point. Next up is his teammate, Ladd McConkey, 6 catches for 83 yards. McConkey just continues to get it done. He's not sexy or exciting because this offense is not a sexy or exciting passing offense. McConkey's also, he looks like he's 12 years old. And he's a little dude out there. Like, he's catching his 5 for 70 or 5 for 60 or 6 for 52. He's in that, 10 to 12 point zone every week in a PPR. Bettered that last night because the yardage total went up. He had 14 points last night in PPR. But he's that 12-point-a-week PPR guy. And he continues to be that. Was that guy again last night? I played through the shoulder injury. So there you go. About as expected. And then finally, Will Dissly, 4 catches for 47 yards. Hayden Hurst was placed on the injured list. He's out for a month now. Dissly will continue to do what he has done, which is almost exactly what he did last night. I think his last 7 games, he's at like 9.9 PPR points a week or something like that. Last night, 8.7. It's exactly who Dissly is, and he will continue to be that guy in this offense moving forward. Some broader news around the league. Let's talk about that before we visit with Armando Marsal. Daniel Jones has taken the Raiders out of his landing spots. According to Jordan Schultz, Daniel Jones does not want to go to the Raiders, even though the Raiders could potentially give him an opportunity to start. It sounds like, according to Adam Schefter, that the Ravens and the Vikings are where he'd like to end up. I think he wants to get some different ears in his, different speak in his ears, end up in a scenario where he gets better coaching, maybe end up in a scenario where his team has some success versus starting for a Raiders team that's going nowhere and would very much be like the Giants situation he just left. So we'll see where Daniel Jones signs. Speaking of the Raiders, I'm going to take a sip of my tea this morning. Speaking of the Raiders, Aidan O'Connell, according to Tom Pelissero, will return from his thumb injury this week. And not just return this week, he will start with Desmond Ridder being the backup now that Gardner Minshew is done with the broken collarbone. Aidan O'Connell is an effective NFL quarterback. We saw him be just that down the stretch last year. He's going to hope to go out and be the 232-yard, 2-touchdown guy. The numbers are not going to be appreciably different than Gardner Minshew. I think he might throw the ball a little bit more than Minshew has, but this is not an offense that's spectacular. We still have all the concerns about what the backfield's going to look like this week, just like we did last week for the Raiders. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. But for now, it seems like Aidan O'Connell is going to start. Obviously, if O'Connell is out of if struggles, like he has a couple of games struggles, maybe they give Ridder some run here at the end of the season because their season's lost anyway. But the hope is that obviously we're still getting those 8-10 targets to Myers and Bowers. Still starting Myers, still starting Bowers, even with Aidan O'Connell under center. I'd be a little more nervous with Desmond Ridder. But it looks like Aidan O'Connell is going to be the guy. Senor Rojo, should we be picking up Vidal? We just talked about that about 3 minutes ago. So you just missed it. We'll also talk about it in a few minutes here with Armando Marsal, so stay tuned for that. But you can always listen to the show on demand, rewind things, all that. Maybe 3 minutes ago, 6-7 minutes ago, I was talking about the backfield situation with the Chargers. Kyle Shanahan said that Brock Purdy's shoulder, a little bit better. What does that really mean? He did some light throwing on Monday. Light throwing? Like, how light was his throwing? Was he, playing catch from 20 feet? Like, he did some light throwing, which is better. Nothing jumped out according to the Niners tests that they ran here in terms of there being a surgical intervention necessary. Nothing seems broken or torn or like there's no catastrophic injury here, according to what we've been told. That does not mean that Purdy will play this week. As we saw last week against the Packers, the Niners need Purdy back under center. We'll watch this information extremely closely because obviously we saw Kittle do his thing last week. Jennings was fine. He caught 5 balls. Deebo Samuel didn't do anything. Christian McCaffrey didn't do anything. The offense didn't do anything with Brandon Allen under center. They desperately need Brock Purdy back for them because, again, their season's on the brink. They've lost a couple of games late that they should have won. They put themselves in this situation. Purdy's taken a step in the right direction. We'll see if he can play in Week 13. Romeo Doubs didn't practice on Monday with the head injury. He had to leave the game over the weekend. They're playing on Thursday. It's like impossible to think that Romeo Doubs will play and be cleared from the concussion protocol to play on Thanksgiving. So Dontavian Wicks is probably the guy you want to pivot to if you're playing that game. Remember, we've seen this all season long. Mike Heath scored a touchdown, wasn't it? The other day, Mike Heath, is that right? Let me pull it up here as I say it. And it sounded right when I said it, and then let's see if it's actually might have been Milton. No, it was Heath. I was right. Heath had the touchdown, 2 catch, 15 yards. Dontavian Wicks is probably the pickup here. Would I be excited about Wicks? No. We've played this game before this season with Wicks after his big effort. Then he let everyone down. There's 6 targets maybe going to Wicks' direction. There could be 3. So be very cautious there. The Cowboys, who also play on Thursday, they're very unlikely to have Jake Ferguson, who he's also dealing with a head injury. The team is also through Executive Vice President Stephen Jones, basically said as much. They're not anticipating at this point in time for Ferguson to be active this week, which means Luke Schoonmaker will get another opportunity. He obviously had a good fantasy game. He's had 2 in a row, but he had a good fantasy game in Week 12 because of the late touchdown. Wasn't really involved in the offense that much, but did get the opportunity to score late to give him that fantasy effort. He is somebody that, for those of you that are looking for that tight end, certainly in play this week, Brevin Spanford involved, but Schoonmaker, obviously the guy you want with the Cowboys. Some other players to deal with here as well. David Montgomery's got the shoulder issue, didn't practice on Monday. We talked about this yesterday. We just don't know what's going on with David Montgomery in that shoulder. Is he going to play on Thursday or not? Tough time for him to get hurt, as we said on the show, episode 279 yesterday. We'll see. And that's all. At this point, we'll see. I wouldn't put it past him playing against the Bears on Thanksgiving, but I also would make sure that I had an option to pivot to, because David Montgomery, really short week to come back from that shoulder injury. Brian Robinson is receiving treatment according to head coach Dan Quinn. How much time is he going to miss to the ankle injury? Maybe none. When the injury happened, we talked about it yesterday. When the injury happened, I thought, boom, that's it. I think a lot of you that saw it at the same time must have had the same reaction because his leg was all bent up under the defender. Came back, made a few plays, and then ultimately was ruled out of the game. Didn't play second half of the game. I don't know. I mean, Austin Eckler almost certain not to play this week because of his injury. I think they'll try to do the can Brian Robinson play thing. Jeremy McNichols is the guy we'll talk to Armando Marsal about. It's looking like McNichols is going to lead this backfield. Chris Rodriguez, I believe, was released last week, so the team could sign him back. But as of right now, it's the only healthy back they have is Jeremy McNichols. So we'll talk about that moving forward. Now we got a couple of situations here. Both bad, one really bad. The first one is Jameson Williams. According to Eric Woodyard of ESPN, Jameson Williams is not going to be prosecuted in any form by the police and the government due from October 6th traffic stop. He was pulled over late at night with 2 guns in his car that was being driven by his brother. I don't know why people are driving around with guns. I'm not in an open carry, whatever the hell that is. I live in California. I don't own a gun. Okay, whatever. That's your thing. The weapons did not belong to Williams. According to the prosecutor's office, they concluded that the warrant was denied because the case law is silent regarding the specific issue. The legislative intent of the concealed pistol license does not support charges under these facts. They said it had nothing to do with him being a football player. I have no reason to doubt that. The bottom line is the guns were in the car. They weren't his guns. He's not going to be prosecuted. This is a reminder, though, that Jameson Williams, is his decision-making process away from the football field good? And I think the answer to that is clearly no. Clearly no. Hope he stays on the straight and narrow the rest of the way. This next situation is, do I drink? Yes. Have I gotten blasted drunk at times? Yes. Have I ever in my entire life driven drunk? No. Don't drive if you've been drinking. Period. Okay? Don't put your life and, more importantly, other people's lives. If you don't care about your life, go drive your car off a cliff. But don't put other people's lives at risk because you're a buffoon. Demarcus Robinson was arrested for drunk driving early morning. He was reported going in excess of 100 miles. So not only was he drunk, he was driving 100 plus miles an hour. If you're drunk on the freeway and the speed's 65, you're going 60, right? And maybe you your foot and you hit 69. Okay. Are you driving 105? So, I mean, the league usually lets the situation play out, right? So it's very unlikely that Robinson will be suspended by the league this season. Now, all Robinson does is score touchdowns, right? Somehow he catches 2 or 3 passes every week for 20 yards, and one of them ends up being the end zone. He did it again this past weekend. The Rams could, of course, do something disciplinary themselves. So that is something to think about this week with everyone playing. I don't think it matters in week 14 with the bye weeks. It is something to think about. But yeah, Demarcus Robinson apparently arrested for a DUI going over 100 miles an hour. Just unacceptable. Football players have you have money, call an Uber, number one. I think you have friends, call a friend. Don't they still get that little call at anyone card that the league? They used to give all the players a card saying, call this number if you're you need a ride, and the NFL will take care of you. I think they still do that. Anyway, bottom line is there's no reason for it. Demarcus Robinson needs to be a better human being. Let's hope he gets the help he needs, because that's just not acceptable in any shape or form. All right. It's a Tuesday, and on our Tuesdays, we usually talk to our man, if I can figure out how to use the tech here, which is not always easy. I know I make it look so simple that you just all think it's easy, but sometimes it's not easy. On Tuesdays, we talk to our man that you know well, who writes DFS articles, who's involved in the Discord all the time, who's on live streams at the site, who's writing breakdowns of the action, and who visits us every Tuesday, ostensibly to talk about the waiver wire. It's Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. So let's bring him in right now. Armando, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good, Ray. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. A little bit of a slow start here. I don't know why. I got to get going. I'm on with Jeff Mans later on the Elite Sports Show today, but I'm glad you're here to save me. So thank you for joining us. Got a lot of things to talk about, even though, as I noted this week, everyone's playing. So we shouldn't need the Justice Hill, Amir Abdullah, dart throw type things we had last week, because everyone should have, their players going this week. But let's talk about some options on the waiver wire. And I want to start out with the situation with the Chargers last night. If you could update us on what you've seen with J.K. Dobbins and his knee, if you've seen anything, I'd appreciate it. I haven't seen anything official. So is Dobbins missing a game, a week? Is he going to IR? I don't have an update there. So talk us through that if you have any information, and even whether you do or don't. Talk us through this backfield. Is it Gus Edwards that we want to add? Is it Kamani Vidal we want to add? Is it Hassan Haskins we want to add if Dobbins is indeed missing time?
Yeah, so I checked about 10, 15 minutes ago, and there isn't any update as far as what the severity of that knee injury is. All we know is obviously that he left the game, never returned. We know that he has a history of injuries here. There's obviously been no word. I didn't see any concerns, in the post game and stuff like that. I think we're all on the same page where it's like it's up in the air at this time. I would be in these situations. I like to prepare for the worst, right, and hope for the best, right? So if we're preparing for the worst, which is Dobbins misses any time, I think we know what we got in Edwards. And you and I talked about this. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I think we know what we have in Edwards. He's going to be someone that they're going to utilize, in the early downs, short yardage situations, but he's limited when it comes to, he's not a pass catcher. So his skill set is very limited to what he could do, right? So Haskins played a lot of snaps, so really didn't get that many opportunities. And I think Vidal was a healthy scratch in that game. So that's probably why we saw Haskins playing so many snaps. I think that the way this is going to work is we're going to see a committee of some sort with Edwards being the head guy there, Vidal being a change of, pace back. And then maybe Haskins will have a role. But if I'm, setting my waiver wire priority, today, I'm going to go with Edwards as my guy, because I do think he's going to be the one that gets the majority of the opportunities. Right behind him, I'm going to go with Vidal. And I think if you don't have a lot of fab, or if it's priority, you're probably going to with Vidal. And I think that's a good way to end up, because I do think he's going to be seeing more opportunities here if Dobbins were to miss time. I wouldn't go out and get Haskins outside of very deep leagues. I'm not going to chase that, those snaps. I'm not going to chase, those opportunities as far as, how much he was on the field. For me, that would be in, 14, 16 team leagues where, the benches are very, very thin. But in a 10 or 12 team league where you still have other options, I would still rather stash someone like a Jalen Wright than go and get, Hassan Haskins. So that's how I view it. I think it's a very cloudy situation at this moment. But if you have to make a decision tonight, that would be the order I would prioritize those three.
Yeah, Haskins had 31 snaps last night and 1 touch.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. My point exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he led, if I'm not mistaken, he led the team in the backfield in snaps, but one opportunity.
You're correct. Yes. So I would agree with your assessment there of that backfield. What about this backfield with the Commanders? We don't know for certain that Austin Eckler's not going to play because of the hip injury, but I think that's a fair assumption. We don't know with Brian Robinson, who you tried to make a go of it last week when it looked like his leg was broken. Tried to make a go, couldn't. We don't know if he's going to play. Right now, the only healthy back on the team is Jeremy McNichols. Jeremy McNichols, are we? I mean, the Commanders have a lot of success running the football, Armando.
Yeah, I think for me, he's someone that you want to go out there and get. You have Austin Eckler is in the concussion protocol. Last I read, Brian Robinson Jr. was getting treatment on the leg, on the ankle, I think it is. And, for me, the good sign is that he was able to come back out and play. I know he didn't last the entire game, but he did come out, and play. So I think that as far as, long-term, I don't think he's going to have an issue. Maybe he can't make it to this week. So I would be preparing that way, but you also have a running back in the concussion protocol there. So even if, one of the two, Robinson Jr. or Eckler, are able to suit up this week, I still think you're going to see, some opportunities here for McNichols. And again, you mentioned it. There are teams on buys. I think for the most part, unless you were depending on David Montgomery or something like that who could miss this week, and you don't have any backup plans, I don't think you need to be looking and playing these guys unless both Eckler and Robinson Jr. are out. Then we're having a conversation about playing McNichols. But I always think you want these kind of running backs on your bench, right? Because now we have two guys that are dinged up, and we don't know the outlook for the future. So just kind of prepare and, be proactive in this instance. And this is one of those running backs that we've seen, he has gotten opportunities. I think he'll get opportunities. It's a really good offense to invest in. So, I think you go out there and you do get someone like McNichols if he's available.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Armando, another backfield situation to ask you about. Tyrone Tracy's done a very good job since ascending to the number one job for the Giants. Obviously, the offense is kind of in disarray with the veto and all of that, but we saw Tracy with another fumble, and we saw Singletary come in and score a touchdown. Singletary obviously didn't take over the backfield or anything like that, and Tracy did come back on the field later, but like, is Singletary a guy that, maybe that they thought about it throughout the week and he's going to get more work this week? Or do you think they go right back to the 15 touches to Tyrone Tracy?
I think Tracy's going to continue to get the crack at it. Unless he continues to fumble, I wouldn't see a situation where his role is going to be, limited at that much. I do think that they're going to use multiple backs. So I don't think it's going to be 20 plus touches for Tracy. I think they're going to utilize Singletary. We saw the changes there. With the offense and the quarterback, they also changed. Eric Gray was also kind of involved there too. So, my thing here is, Ray, like, I think Daboll's on the hot seat, right? Like, I feel like he's lost his locker room. You see Malik Neighbors, how he's talking. So if they make a change at coaching, like if they make a coaching change here, how is that going to impact the offense as well, right? So, like, that's why I wouldn't want to be too invested, long-term in Singletary. I still think this is going to be Tracy Jr.'s backfield. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking to handcuff, I view him as a handcuff. I'm not viewing him as a plug-and-play. I'm not viewing him as someone that I think is going to now all of a sudden, take over, become a committee by any means.
What about Roschon Johnston? He continues to get touchdowns. He's one of the more he's only completely touchdown dependent because that's all he does. Is he just someone that you should have if you have a Tyrone Tracy? I mean, if you have a DeAndre Swift, if he's out there on the waiver wire, do you add him again? It's week 13. Everyone's playing. Like, talk us through the Roschon Johnston scenario.
Yeah, he's seen some short yardage situations. We've seen him get some goal line opportunities now in the last couple of games. For me, these are running backs you want to stash. And it might sound redundant with how we talk about some of these running backs. Like, I'm not looking to start Roschon. Like last week, I got a lot of questions. Oh, are we starting, Roschon Johnston? Are we like those kind of running backs? I'm not looking to start them because you're literally chasing touchdowns. The opportunities are not as significant as some of the other backs that we have options with. So for him, you're chasing touchdowns. However, we know that the team trusts him enough that if Swift were to go down, I think now you have a easy, flex plug and play, a potential RB2 plug and play, depending on the matchup, depending on your running back situation. So these are the kind of players you want to have on your bench and not prepare for Armageddon 2 weeks from now, like and drop someone like Roschon Johnston for a second quarterback. No, I'd rather keep Roschon Johnston on my bench and prepare for that week, the next week when I'm there, because these are valuable, I think, assets to have. You might not be using them right now, but eventually they could become an every week starter for you or a very good piece for the rest of your roster. So again, I'm not looking to start Johnston, but I do think that his role is solidified. He's going to steal some of those goal line. And I think what this does is ultimately caps that ceiling, that we had with Swift a couple of weeks ago.
Armando Marsal joins us here every Tuesday on Fantasy Sports Daily. Armando, what about, as we move to the wide receiver position, the Panthers? Bryce Young is playing better. Now, there's still a lot of work to be done here, but he's playing better. I'll give him credit for that. They obviously pushed the Chiefs right to the end of the game last week. David Moore shows up and has a huge game. Adam Thielen returns and made a couple of catches, but didn't do much. Xavier Legette continues to be the guy that just catches, the 4 passes for 40 yards every week. Who are we prioritizing if Moore, Thielen, and Legette are available? Who are we prioritizing? What's the order that you would rank these 3 guys moving forward?
Yes, I would still prioritize Thielen. He didn't play a ton of the snaps there. First game back. So, I think his role is the one that's going to be the more solidified on a week-to-week basis. I'm not expecting Moore to be their number one guy moving forward. So I would rank them Thielen, who I expect to operate, on the slot. We have to see what happens when Coker comes back too, right? Who they were using out of the slot. So we haven't seen that, all four of them there. But I'm going to prioritize Thielen, Leggett, and Moore. Like I don't want to chase the more production from 1 week. Like, that's just how I'm viewing it. We have to understand, the situation. Thielen was returning from that first game back from injury, so maybe easing him in. We saw them utilize Brooks very little. Like, I think his role is going to change. I think this offense is going to look very differently in 3 weeks than it did this past weekend.
Armando, if I say this guy has caught 1 ball, 2 balls, 2 balls, 5 balls, 3 balls, 2 balls, 2 balls, and he's had 1 game of 51 yards.
But 6 touchdowns. But he
has 6 touchdowns in those 7 games. Yeah. And we talked about him, you and I, before, and it's like, what do you do with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine? Because there's nothing here. He has seen a little bit more work. He's got 11 targets the last 2 games. So they've amped that up. He's only caught 4 passes. He's clearly the number 2 pass catcher in this offense with the Titans, but it's really is if he doesn't score a touchdown, it's 6 points. It's 5 points. It's 4 points. Anything different than our previous discussions with him?
Nothing has changed for me, Ray. I mean, you mentioned it, the receptions. Like, yeah, he's getting some more opportunities in recent games. If you want to chase those opportunities, sure. But I think this is the way I view him. And this is I said this last week, I think, and we've talked about this. Like, if you're okay with a player that needs to score a touchdown to produce based on the numbers, if you look at the numbers, he needs to score a touchdown to be, to make it worth your while. If you're okay with chasing a very unpredictable stat, which is touchdowns, sure. I'm not in the business of chasing touchdowns. Like, this is exactly why I don't want to, start Roschon Johnson, because I don't want to chase touchdowns. For me, I like chasing opportunities. I like chasing targets. I like chasing snap shares. And that's how I do it, rush attempts. Like, that is what we're looking for, because that's how the production will eventually develop. Guessing this one, 3 catch guy who's going to score a touchdown in one of those catches, I just don't want to do it. Outside of very deep leagues, I've been starting NWI in a 14-team PPR league the last couple of weeks, but it's a 14-team with 3 flexes. So it's one of the Keen's classics. It's a very deep league. So that's where I've had to start them. I've dealt with injuries and bye weeks. So outside of that, I don't want exposure to him.
Devaughn Vele with the Broncos. Obviously, everyone's focused on Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton for good reason. But Vele, it's 3 straight weeks now with 4 catches. And, you keep hearing continuing glowing reviews. And unlike the running back, where we hear great things about the running backs, and then Sean Payton doesn't bother utilizing any of them on a consistent basis, he says nice things about Vele, and they're actually getting him the football. I mean, again, with 14 points, 11 points, 14 points, PPR, like the last 3 games, is he in that zone now where we're looking at him as that 12-point-a-week kind of receiver that can be a third option for us in the PPR setup?
I think he's in PPR settings. He's someone you want to have on your bench, like as a reliable plug and play in case of an emergency, right? And next week, there's a lot of, not this week, but the following week, there's a lot of teams on bye as well. If you're going to be dealing with bye weeks, then I think he's in PPR, someone you could plug and play. We've seen now a 15, 16, and 23% target share the last 3 games for him. You mentioned it. He's had at least 4 catches in each of the last 3 games. He's also had 4, 5, and 9 targets. So like you're seeing a pretty steady drumbeat as far as target share is concerned there for him. And it's a team that the passing game has looked better each week. Like, Bo Nix is playing some pretty solid football. He's accurate. He's making good throws, making good decisions. So I think when you're looking at an ascending offense like this right now, and his role is also ascending, I think investing in him, it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're starting him every week, but if you're in a bind, if you're looking for a flex option in PPR settings, I think you at least can, say, I'm going to get anywhere between 6 and 8 fantasy points in the PPR settings from this young man. So yeah, I like the idea of adding him, and I don't think it's going to cost much. Like, what is it going to cost you? Like, 3%, 4% of your fab? I don't think anyone's going to go out there and bid 5, 6, 7%. So I think you could get him at a cheap price right now. And I think before he has a huge game, which is very feasible, I think now is the time to kind of add that depth to your roster.
Armando, what about the situation with the Commanders? They didn't do anything for 3 quarters. And then I think he threw for 190 plus yards and 2 touchdowns, did Jaden Daniels in the 4th quarter, the 31 points, the last 4 minutes, whatever the hell it was. That game was insane. Noah Brown. Noah Brown's had some moments, and he seems to clearly be the number 2 receiver behind Terry McLaurin out wide for the Commanders. Talk us through him, and if you could, would you prefer, if you had to take the shot, would you prefer Vele or Noah Brown? And make sure it's Noah Brown, because there's a Diami Brown on the same team.
Yes, make sure it's Noah. Yes, make sure it's Noah Brown. That would be a huge mistake, right? I actually prefer Brown over Vele and the Panthers group. Like we've seen now, since you look back at week 8, right? You pull up the numbers. So here are the targets: 7, 6, 7, 4, 10. He has a 20%, 32%, 22%, 12, and 29% target share in those games. So he's very involved in the passing game here. You're now talking about catching, passes from a very good young quarterback in Jaden Daniels, a team that passes the ball. They're dealing now with injuries at the running back position, so that can change their game. They're the way they approach the game in the upcoming weeks. So for me, I mean, Noah Brown, he's cleared 60 receiving yards in 3 of the last 5 games. So for me, I like the idea of adding him. I think he's pretty solid flex play, especially in 12-team leagues or 14-team leagues and PPR settings. I think he's a very solid flex play in good matchups. So for me, I think he's someone that if he's out there, I'd be willing to go and add, because I think he could definitely help some teams, who are hurting at the wide receiver position.
Armando, Travis Kelce's a top 5 tight end all time, right? And the question is, how high on that list do you put him? He has fewer touchdowns this season than Noah Gray has the last 2 games. The Chiefs, and they've done this for a couple years now, it's the behind the back, the under the leg, the over, there's all these weird everything, underneath near the, and they're always running plays from the 3-yard line somehow. Like they're always at the 3-yard line. And Noah Gray's getting a lot of looks down here in the red zone. He's not doing much, right? He's on the field, he's running routes, and he's scoring touchdowns. He's not doing much other than that. Is he a desperation tight end? Is he plug and play kind of guy? Have you seen enough the last couple of weeks? You're like, look, hell, he's a top 12 guy the rest of the way. What are your thoughts with Noah Gray?
No, I don't want to jump the gun and say he's a top 12 guy the rest of the way, or someone that I'm comfortable starting each and every week. But like you mentioned, this is an offense that there's going to be one week where he does this. He's now done it twice in a row. But then very next week he could go and get 1 catch for 10 yards, and that's his role. Like that's where he's at. I view him as an emergency desperation dart throw. I don't necessarily feel comfortable. I probably would have him outside my top 15 this week, especially when all the teams are playing. So for me, it's a desperation. If you're really hurting at the position, if the waiver wires are thin, like there's still a lot of leagues where you can find a Jonnu Smith, in some leagues, you might find a Hunter Henry, like, players like that who I feel a little bit safer about than Noah Gray. But it really depends on who's out there, your tight end situation. But is he someone I trust on a weekly basis moving forward just because of the last 2 weeks? No, not at all.
What about Theo Johnson? He has a significant role with the Giants, and there is some consistency to his game, but it's muted, right? He's not putting up big numbers yardage-wise. He's not getting in the end zone. Obviously, that team is kind of in disarray, and they're kind of looking toward the future, and he's part of that. Is Theo Johnson kind of a plug-and-play based on matchup scenario kind of guy? Is he in that same zone as Noah Gray, even though they're getting to their point production differently?
Yeah, I would even say that maybe feel a little bit safer about Theo Johnson than I do Noah Gray, because you mentioned it. Like, if you look at the last 3 games, 6 targets in each of those games. He has a 22, 19, and 20% target share in those 3 games. So a little bit more of a not focal point, but the bigger part of the offense. When you look at Noah Gray, he had a 17% target share the week before last, and 11% target share this weekend where he caught 2 passes. So like when you're looking at the opportunities on what the team is doing, Theo Johnson is much more involved there. So I like I said before, I like chasing the opportunities. So I'm going to chase the opportunities with Theo Johnson. Not necessarily someone I'm comfortable plugging and playing. Like in one of my dynasty leagues where I'm hurting at the position, he is someone I've plugged and played before, but not someone I want to rely on each and every week. I still think that there are other options out there that are a little bit better. But again, it all depends on your situation, your tight ends, your league scoring setting. All of that, will vary on how you use someone like a Theo Johnson.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com for more of his analysis, not just here on Tuesdays. Go to FantasyGuru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. $99 the rest of the way. Includes the playoffs. Actually includes everything but the Super Bowl betting guide. So you get all the DFS, all the seasonal, and all the wagering, all of it, which means you get all the access to Armando Marsal in Discord, all of his live streams, all of his articles. Subscribe tab in the top right corner over at FantasyGuru.com. Armando, let's look in the chat room and see a couple of questions here that people have questions or want to have answered. John G says, is Addison back? Addison had a huge game last weekend. Justin Jefferson vanished from the offense last week. What's going to happen this week? Jefferson's going to have a huge game. Addison's going to disappear from the offense. That's my thought. What's yours?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't like chasing, like, I've been asked the same thing about Jalen Waddle. I don't like just chasing 1 week performance. This is a good stepping stone for him, right? This is now, okay, hopefully he could pick up from where he left off last week. But I agree. I'm not going to chase this. I do hope that this helps him and propels him to have a strong closeout to the season. But am I ready to say, okay, he's going to perform at this level each and every week? No, I'm not ready to say that.
I mean, Justin Jefferson's getting 10 targets.
Yes.
I mean, it's guaranteed. After what happened last week, you can't. I said this yesterday on the show. You can't have that happen. It just can't. You can't have him catching 2 passes. Hawkinson's looks pretty good. He's going to get 7-8 targets a week. They're going to throw it 30 times. It's only 12 passes for the rest of the team, right? So it's going to be tough for Addison to consistently produce anything more than 7 or 8 points unless he's getting in the end zone. Sean H says Quientin Johnston needs to learn to catch. He does, and we saw it again last night. And I mentioned this earlier. 4 of his 9 games, he hasn't gotten to 25 yards. Like, come on, man. Like, I know he's gotten in the end zone and he's been better than last season. But do we have any real hope here with him? Because last night again was a reminder that the hands just aren't really good.
I mean, you watched that, and he clearly, like, after he missed those passes, this is the thing that for me was worrisome too. We already knew he has difficulty, but then his mental, the mental aspect of it, he was out of it. Like, that's it. He was completely out. It got him, and I think that's going to continue being a problem. We've talked about him, many times on this show, and he's one of those guys that you're chasing those touchdowns. Like, you're chasing. The
guy you don't like, the style of player you don't like.
Yeah. And the way I look at it is, you're until he shows us that he's capable of catching passes, right? And all of that, he's not going to, I don't think he's going to be a consistent receiver. So yeah, it's really bad. I mean, this team could be so much better if they had some reliable pass catches. McConkey's doing phenomenal. He made some great catches yesterday. But they've really missed, like, the Keenan Allen. I know Mike Williams was barely on the field, but they missed those kind of receivers there.
Yeah, Herbert still continuing to play great work. He needs those teammates to catch the ball.
Yeah.
David P. has the odd but frequent trade where I see a lot of this. It's like, let's trade this wide receiver 2 for this wide receiver 2, or this running back 1 for this running back 1. This question is Davante Adams or Amari Cooper. So if I had to put it to you, who would you rather have the rest of the way, Armando? Which one of these 2 former stars, who obviously are dealing with some struggles now, neither one has a bye the rest of the way, so we're clear there. Cooper or Davante Adams for you down the stretch?
This is like asking someone that likes burgers, do you want your burger with cheese or without cheese? Like, it's a burger. I'm going to eat it, right?
Right.
I'm going to go with Adams here. I'm just going to go with Adams. But this doesn't change the dynamic of anyone's roster. I don't like making those trades because for me, this feels like we're swapping players in similar tiers. And I don't like making those kind of moves. So I'm just going to stick with Adams.
Tony T says, who do you value more, McNichols or Amir Abdullah, and do you view them as weekly rentals or holds? As Armando was saying earlier, I'm going to recapture what he said with McNichols. Yeah, you can add him, and he can be a hold. Because, again, I think a lot of people, everyone just randomly grabs backup running backs every week. They change every week. And I answered this question. I've joked about it 1,500 times this year. Just sure, he's worth the hold. If the top 2 running backs on the team are hurt, not playing, when is Austin Eckler going to be back? This is like his 5th concussion or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible Austin Eckler's season's over. So, yeah, I think McNichols is a hold. I think Amir Abdullah could be a hold. We still have no idea what's going on in the backfield with the Raiders. Is Madison going to play? Is Zamir White going to play? But in an ideal world, I don't want to be playing either one of these guys, especially in week 13 where everyone should be on the field.
Yeah, the thing with these running backs is there's no concrete answer because their value goes hand in hand with their starting running back of the team, right? Like, yeah. Once Brian Robinson Jr. comes back, and let's say, like you mentioned, if Austin Eckler doesn't need to come back, McNichols is not someone we can rely on. Once we see Madison White, healthy, they're not. You can't count on Abdullah. Like, these are running backs that their values are tied in with the starting running backs of the team. Right now, if you ask me today which one of these 2 I prefer, I'm going to go with McNichols because I do think that there's a chance that Austin Eckler does not clear the concussion protocol this week. And if Robinson Jr. can't or isn't operating at 100%, McNichols is probably going to get some pretty good opportunities there for Washington. So I'm going to lead him. I just think it's better. You're investing in a better overall offense. But I just looked at Jeff's rankings for the week, and they're side by side, right? Like that's where they're at. So I would trust those rankings, but McNichols would be the one I'm prioritizing if you're trying to set a real wire priority there.
David A asks a question that we get a lot. It's a question about looking toward the fantasy playoffs. Remember, it's week 13. We still have a month to go before we get to the championship week. It's still a long period of time. David's asking a question. Would you consider picking up Jacksonville's defense as they have week 16 against Vegas and week 17 against Tennessee? Number one, I would never carry two defenses. That's number one. Number two, the Jacksonville defense stinks. Okay. Number three, they do have good matchups. They face the Texans this week, but really weeks 14 to 17, the matchups aren't bad, but they're just not good. They're just not a good defense. And again, I'm not carrying a second defense. So that means I have to be committed to the Jaguars. I'm not committing to the Jaguars, Armando. What do you say?
I couldn't agree more with you. I'm never going to carry two defenses. For me, I'm going to play the defense on a week-to-week basis, and I play the best matchups. Like really, what I do. You mentioned it. Jacksonville's defense. They're atrocious when it comes to the pass. Like this is a team that I know you're looking at these two offenses, but Will Levis could carve them up in the air. Like he really could carve them up. But I'm not saying he will, but he could. So no, I'm going to just wait until you get to week 16, week 17, see what defenses are out there. Maybe you have a good defense right now, a solid one, and they don't have to be in a good matchup. This is one thing too, and maybe you disagree, Ray, but I look at this like if I'm holding a good defense right now, I don't care who they play in week 16. If it's a good defense, I'm just going to roll with them. Like just say the Steelers or the Browns, if you have one of those defenses that are really good and they have subpar matchups, I'd rather play that good defense than a bad defense in a good matchup. So that's how I would approach the situation.
Remember too, what if Josh Allen breaks his leg this week? The Bills are a totally different. Oh my gosh, now we want to, so I get the line. It's a good thought process, but planning for a month from now, you can't. It's too far. I can't do it.
Especially with a defense, with a position that's just easy to grab off waivers.
Right. Here's a Buymageddon 2 question. Next week we have 6 more teams, the final bye week scenario in the NFL, 6 more teams. So Sean C. asked a question in the non-PPR, Keon Coleman or Romeo Dobbs? 2 injured guys. I guess I'm going to throw a dart at Keon Coleman. I don't know, but these are 2 injured guys. Like I love making the move a week early so you're not battling everyone else next week. But what do we do here?
Yeah, it really depends on the statuses of these players. If you're just throwing a dart right now, Coleman, but I would, if you have the opportunity to do this, Sean, I would try to get both of these guys and kind of see how it plays out. See if one of them, is healthy. See if the other one does not play. And then go from there. That's what I would try to do. If you have to only choose one, I would go with Coleman. I would just, roll the dice there with Coleman, but I think it's very close here.
Justin K has a question. Really, the tight end position has been weird this year because everyone added Hawkinson, and then everyone that had Hawkinson seemingly had Bowers or Kelsey or McBride. Like they had these 2 top tight ends and they could never play, and Hawkinson was activated, and everyone's got this roster crunch of having 2 tight ends. I've seen a lot of other people who have Evan Ingram as one of their 2 tight ends. And as I wrote about again in the Coffin Corner piece on Friday last week, I'm befuddled by the amount of people that think Evan Ingram is no good. People are, trying to name their kids Will after Will Dissly because all he does is get about 80% of what Evan Ingram does every week. Yeah. So in this scenario, Justin took advantage of someone not being smart when they dropped Mark Andrews, but now he has Andrews and Ingram on his team. Now remember, the problem here with this is the Ravens have a bye next week. So the question is, do I make Andrews my number 1 tight end? Okay, but you've got to keep Ingram at this point because he's got to have to play for you next week. So I think we're still in that matchup zone. Or do you think that Andrews, who is scoring touchdowns, but only catching 4 passes for 40 yards, is he clearly ahead of Ingram for you moving forward?
No, not necessarily. I don't think Ingram's done. I think that there's opportunities. Yes, the production, the offense hasn't been great, but the opportunities are there. I would actually start Ingram this week over Andrews myself. But again, if you want to hold both these tight ends, sure. But I wouldn't necessarily say, Andrews is your locked in number 1 tight end the rest of the way. I would play matchups with the 2. and and go from there. If you want to hold both of them, by all means. But personally, I would keep one myself. I know it's not an ideal situation to cut Andrews, but you're not going to use him this week. He's on bye next week, so I would cut him. And if there's running back or wide receiver depth that you could add to that roster, that's what I would do.
We have Ingram ahead in the rankings too this week over Mark Andrews, if that matters. Early rankings, they'll change and all that, but the early rankings over at fantasyguru.com. Thanks for all the questions. Really appreciate that, everybody. You can always ask questions to us every day here on the show, both on Facebook and on YouTube. You can talk to Armando again every Tuesday with us here. He joins us about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, talking waivers, taking those questions. He's got a big week planned the rest of the week, Armando. Thanksgiving's coming too. Is that screwing the week up for you, or are you going to still be able to get everything out as normal this week?
No, we're going to get everything out. I'm actually going to record 2 podcasts this week. So I'm going to do, Tyler and I are going to record one. Actually, today, we're going to break down the Thanksgiving slate and stuff like that. There's going to also be some DFS content for the Thanksgiving slate. And then we have, business as usual. I'll be recording another podcast. Instead of Thursday this week, it'll be Friday. Chris and I will be recording that one. We'll be talking about, the weekend slate and things like that. And then obviously we got the staff picks coming out. Everything's just going to be out of, a day early. So instead of Thursday, keep an eye out for things on Wednesday. So it'll be from first thing in the morning till late at night, but everything will be on the site there. So just keep an eye out for everything. The usual stuff, the snap and usage report, the red zone review, the staff picks, all of that good stuff. And then obviously Sunday morning, we have the live stream, 11 a.m. Eastern. That is still going to go happen this weekend, just like it is every week. So we'll be there. We'll be in Discord as well, talking and answering questions. Not much change. It's just the dates, Ray. It's just the dates. So instead of things going live on Thursday, they'll be going live on Wednesday here.
You can find Armando on Twitter X at Armando_Marsal. You can find his show, Mind of Marsal, his podcast. If you go to the Fantasy Guru site, click the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page where you can find this show, find Jeff Mann's show, you can find Justin Fensterman's show, you can find Armando's show, that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page as well. Armando, thanks for joining us as you do every Tuesday. Have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, and we'll talk to you a week from now.
Yes, sir. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours too, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone. All right, guys. Enjoy it, eat a lot, and have fun.
He's Armando Marsal. I'm Ray Flowers. Don't forget, I'm on with Jeff Mann's today, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Not going to be on tomorrow. Going to be on today with Jeff, so check that out here in a couple of hours. For Armando, I am Ray. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com.